Hey, family. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Whenever you tuning in to this is this platform that we've been able to host. We call this show Relevant Conversations with Me. I'm Bishop John Selders. I'm your host, and glad to talk about things that I think are important as it relates to who we are and whose we are, to talk faith and action, to talk social justice, and to be in conversations with, by and large, folk that are my friends, my colleagues, and tonight is no different. I'm glad to have with us tonight my brother and friend, who for we pushing up on 3 decades here now of sustained friendship, brotherhood, and work out here in the I'm gonna say it the way my Black Baptist brothers and sisters would say it, out here in the vineyard, doing the work. Let me just welcome brother the Reverend Joshua Pawelek to this platform. Go ahead and greet the folk, brother.
Hey, Bishop, good to see you. Hey, everyone. Always good to be on this show and to be in conversation. There's a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. Listen, it's game on, right? You know, in such in many different ways and on many different venues and spaces. I think what is compelling me in particular to be in almost daily conversation with faith leaders, pastors, and other folk who care about what's happening with folk vis-a-vis. And when I say that, I'm really speaking of folk that are actually living life on the ground day for day, right? That there is much needed leadership and continuing of calling for what is right, what is honest, what is ethical, what is moral, what's fair. There's quite a bit out there going on. We have the justice activists and activism front that's happening out in the Midwest with our sisters and brothers, our siblings of faith and conscience in Minneapolis, that you and I both know folk who are providing leadership there. And then as we turn our attention to what's happening in other places and spaces. We have a good friends and brothers who are and sisters who are in places like Los Angeles, where they had their version of some of this.
Oh yeah.
And then Memphis, Tennessee,
Chicago.
Chicago. We had a sister on, Sister Waltrina, on last week to talk about the work that's happening in Chicago. And then of course we have to, if we're all out there in the world. I love Christian scripture that says that the work begins in Jerusalem, right? Go ye therefore into all the world and baptizing them in the name, and all of that. But it starts where we were, where it starts at home first. So we got to talk about Connecticut, and we have to talk about what it is that we're engaged in here. So why don't we start there? You've been involved in several things on multiple fronts. So why don't you kind of paint the picture as broad as you can, and then we can dip into some of this and take some deeper dives.
Sure. So I think I'm not even sure where to start. Immigration, I think, is the issue of the day. I think it's the concern, particularly after watching what happened in Minneapolis. Although obviously there was Chicago, there was Washington D.C., Memphis, Los Angeles, but Minneapolis was so visible, and the resistance was so well organized and so visible. It's just on a lot of people's minds here. And one thing that makes me hopeful is there's so many people organizing. There's so many people looking at bystander training, and historically we've done accompaniment for undocumented people going to their hearings, but now it's bystander training. Now it's building out rapid response networks. Now it's building out the mutual aid structures, so that when someone gets detained or deported, that family that they left behind, or that I should say that they've been torn from, has some support from the community. And it's good to see people in different parts of the state talking to each other. And one thing that's been important to me, as you know, is making sure clergy, at least the clergy in my networks, and a lot of these folks are white suburban clergy who historically have not paid that close attention, but it's making sure clergy are having ways to show up and be visible, and making the faith-based moral argument that what's happening, the way they're doing immigration enforcement is wrong. It's cruel. It's heartless. It's evil. And so I have an interest in seeing the clergy taking a public stand.
And don't we have a interesting position as faithful folk and as faith leaders? Most of our holy books and our holy traditions, right? When I say that, the teachings and the acknowledgments of those things that we consider that inform us, have the visitor, the foreigner, the stranger at the center. And there are often stories of how do we provide hospitality. The great sin of ancient Judeo-Christian traditions is the sin of inhospitality.
Right.
As we might purport, there are other great sins. In being inhospitable is like key. And so I find it just bizarre that we have a strain of well, let me just say white Christian nationalism, that somehow, the foreigner, the stranger, the immigrant should be cast out. right? That they're, I just find that just as bizarre as I can get. And I hear some of our siblings, faith siblings, regurgitating a line that's contradictory to what I think what we've signed on to do. What?
What it says in the actual text.
Yeah, what are you talking about? So this has been just I'm trying to be nice about it. It's been a strange, weird time to be doing what it is that we do, and to find that we are relegated to the margins of this conversation. What in the world? And not leading. We're seemingly in the background, right, of conversations where we have, quite honestly, at least one legitimate voice, to be crying. And so to be crying out and speaking out and repping, if we tell any of our big stories in the let me start with the Christian tradition. I mean, the Christmas narrative is about no place in the inn, with Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, baby Jesus, being born in the manger. I mean, being on the run from government, having to go south of the border. Okay. It makes no sense. It for me makes no sense. And as I think about it, then when it comes to then moving on things, finding ways to find our lane, right? We are anticipating here in the Northeast what has descended on others in LA, Chicago, Memphis, Minneapolis. There's word about the coming surge. There was as some of you may know, there was the threat from this current regime that said, if you get involved, in doing things, ICE related and other things, that then it might not go so well for you as decisions are made in Washington D.C. Toward places like New York State and Connecticut, New Jersey, these Massachusetts, these blue states, right? Because clearly we are the only people that are doing things the wrong way. It's where we have these perceived blue states with Democratic leadership at the helm of it. So there's all of that that's operating in the background of what I think is driving much of the policy conversation and much of the actual movement that's afoot. This kind of white supremacist, white nationalist, propagandized, white Christian, but kind of anti-Christian because I can't find the Christ in it. Anyway, there's so much of this that I have some opinions about, and certainly if pushed, not hardly any, I'll talk about it.
I know that about you.
You're right. I'm not too bashful about it. So Reverend Josh, talk about a little bit. So you've been engaged in a couple of different things. I mean, we've from the very beginning of this current regime engaged in what might be efforts afoot to see where our positions are, where we can provide leadership and resource, while certainly wanting to be in lockstep and in partnership with the immigrant rights organizations and those leaders Um, I have always said out loud, let's not forget that while the focus was initially allegedly the push of those who were coming into the United States illegally, right? Well, that was from the South. So coming up from South America through Central America and then morphing over the southern border of the United States, which I find just remarkable, in that much of what is considered the United States was Mexico historically. Anyway, then I'm trying not to get ahead, but those borders are very significantly man-made, in recent years, quite frankly. But we don't have that same up north. Those borders are not mined in the same kind of way. Okay, but anyway, and then all of a sudden there was a shift made, and now it was just wrong to be Black and to be Somali or I mean some other stuff. I grew up understanding, driving while Black was a thing, but now walking while brown is a thing. I mean, it's just and then to have law, and to have courts, in particular our Supreme Court, make the case that it's okay to racial profile. So let's talk a little bit about some of that work that we've been engaged in, early in this current administration.
So I think I mean, about our congregation in Manchester. After the first Trump election, we became a sanctuary congregation. And in addition to having the option to house people who may be trying to avoid deportation, or in our case, we worked with a person who was seeking asylum. There's all sorts of other things that status suggests. So it's not just housing people. It's supporting the immigrants' rights groups. It's doing the accompaniment, as I mentioned earlier, and the mutual aid kind of support, the family support, and now it's this prep for what we all feel is a surge, an ICE surge is coming at some point. And so a lot of the work right now is about getting ready. I'm not sure if there's other stuff you want to touch on, though, from before.
No, that you're naming it. I think as this current wave and this current regime and administration, as it took office and began to rifle through their priorities vis-a-vis Project 2025. Several things became clear that we were going to need to find ourselves in place, and accompaniment is certainly at the top of that list of priorities for those of us who wanting to be supportive of our immigrant rights organizational leaders and the needs of the communities that were being targeted specifically. I think what it has led to is a lot of us not necessarily knowing exactly what to do. So there are a number of us busied. Right?
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of busyness going on. Right. And then as stuff started to go down, we have found, at least for those of us of faith, we're trying to find our particular lane. We're trying not to get in the way of those of our partners and our friends who are doing the day-to-day on the ground, tasks that it takes, as well as you and I may lament a little bit. This work is long term.
Yes.
Right. and we don't necessarily have the infrastructure in place to do the what I think is required in some cases to do the long-term strategy work that is going to take, and to be forward thinking at the same time, because to know that there's a surge coming. What happens once the surge, as we see now in Minneapolis, the signal is we're going to be dialing it back, right? So are we ready to accommodate whatever it is that comes as we understand it as a surge? But what does that then leave the community, in tatters? Tatters, what's the reaction or the response for us afterwards? Have we thought in terms of how we might sustain ourselves and how we might sustain the relationships that we have, how we might sustain programmatically? What are the instances where we can shift our ministries, quite frankly, and in some ways, and lead instead of being, as I've said to you a couple of times, I feel like we're reacting in lots of ways.
Yeah, and I think some of this is there's always going to be some reactivity. I think a lot of what was happening in faith communities throughout January was all reaction to what we were seeing in Minneapolis. And sometimes I'm good with doing something in the moment, reacting in the moment, as long as we're also asking that organizing question: what's the long game? What's the way to move whatever we're doing? What's the way to move it forward? We should talk about the vigils, but also a lot of the work when you're talking about the lane. I think there is a lane for people of faith in the legislative advocacy, and I think that's another part of the history we didn't mention earlier is all the work that went into Connecticut's Trust Act, which creates that wall between Connecticut law enforcement and Connecticut, like municipal administrations, and federal immigrations and customs enforcement or border patrol. There is a wall in Connecticut. It's one of the reasons I think the Trump administration looks at Connecticut as a sanctuary state. But it's actually our law enforcement are not supposed to cooperate with ICE, like in terms of turning people over to them that they may want. There's some limits to that. Like if it's a certain kind of felony, then they have to turn them over. But otherwise, there is this wall. So we put a lot of time and energy into that, and that's not reaction. That's working with partners. It's working with the ACLU. It's working with the immigrants' rights groups who are kind of setting that agenda, working with the champions in the legislature and getting this legislation slowly. I mean, we passed it once decades ago, and then it's been updated a few times. It was updated last session. It was updated in the special session last fall. So that's a piece of this. The two things I'll name, and maybe we can dig into them a little more deeply in the course of the conversation. And I know that the ACLU is working on these, and Connecticut for All's part of it, and the immigrants' rights groups are part of it. It's getting the governor to sign an executive order that makes it clear that the Connecticut National Guard will not be mobilized for immigration enforcement. That seems to me to be very important, and there's some nuances to that, but that's something that we're hoping to see in the coming months. And then there's also, I believe there's a bill, or there's going to be a bill on automatic license plate readers. Most police departments have automatic license plate readers, and usually they use them to look for stolen vehicles. But it turns out that data gets shared with agencies, private companies that are outside of Connecticut, and then it gets shared with ICE. And now you haven't committed a crime, but your license plate gets read, and you're an immigrant or an undocumented person, or someone who's, you know, in that immigration process, in that process of that broken system, and now you get pulled over and now you get detained, and it's because some company in another state saw you and then made it clear that you were detainable. So again, automatic license plates readers will not be used for immigration enforcement in Connecticut. That's what that bill would do. So, and I think there's a place for people of faith to be working on that kind of thing. That comes down to who are our neighbors, protecting our neighbors, and making sure that this federal overreach is not happening to our neighbors, because when it is, then all the communities start becoming less safe. People stop going to work. Kids stay home from school. People stop seeking health care. The litany. All that stuff starts happening.
And that's already occurring, right? So
Yeah.
so what has already begun to occur, there's a role that we as faith leaders and our faith communities can step in and really provide much needed support.
And actually, right? we should make the point. I mean, the way we've been framing it is we want to be ready for an ICE surge, but ICE is operating in Connecticut, and the data I'm seeing would suggest there's been about 900 detentions since the beginning, just over a year ago. And I don't actually know how that compares to a normal year, but I know it's not 900 detentions in a normal year. No. So, and a lot of these folks they're not criminals. Some of them are high school students, and some people have gotten out of detention, but some people haven't, and some people have been deported. And there already are families that are in need of financial support, diapers, and grocery shopping, and rides for their kids, all that. So it's happening here. It's not at the scale, obviously, of a place where they might be surging, but it's definitely happening here.
Right. In Minnesota, in Minneapolis specifically, 3,000 of these detentions and deportations and that kind of activity has occurred since that kind of uptick of work. So there are ways in which we've been responding and been working again with our partners, our local partners across the state, and we should call some of their names. We're talking about ULA. We're talking about Make a Road. We're talking about Hartford Deportation Defense.
Connecticut Students for a Dream.
That's right.
Immigrants.
Right. So there we do have our kind of long-term, long-standing partners that we've been working with, and then there are other groups that have come alongside there, and are forging their own name and their own space to do much of the same kind of work. Now, and so we want to give you all the shout outs, and of course, the ACLU has been right there in the midst of that, providing the kind of legal support and aid and help that needs to happen, when we're doing the kind of work that they're doing. Glenn Formica and others who are lawyers, who are our friends, who are making the great sacrifice, sometimes at their own expense, quite frankly, to provide legal support. So shout out to all of the folk here in Connecticut. And if we didn't call your name, y'all know I done got older, and so I just forgot. And didn't, mean no disrespect or harm to any of you who are out there doing the work. We know who you are. You know who we are. And so we respect you and love you. And certainly when we can provide some support or help, we're always there to respond. I want to talk a little bit about let's raise up. There's something going to happen this week.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So there's a group of clergy that came together to plan. It's a vigil. It's another vigil. We did one just a week and a half ago at the Federal Building, 450 Main Street
in Hartford.
In
This is in
Hartford.
Hartford. And by the way, before you get started, I got to shout out to the group that's been carrying on the More Monday CT tradition, and our friends and our partners down in Stanford.
Right.
And just a plug, I'm hoping that we will hear from them on next week. Hear an update about the work that's been going on and has continued to carry on in the coldest of days. Lord have mercy. They've been out there holding forth weekly in front of the state Supreme Court building down in Stanford. So shout out to our siblings down in Stanford that have been holding up and surviving the cold. We pray that there will be a freeze reprieve. Say that 3 times fast.
You've had them on this show before too, right?
I have, and they've been on, and we're hoping that a few of them will be on next week to give us an update and to keep talking. So I just wanted to lift them up. I'm sorry. Go ahead and talk about what did occur on last Friday.
All right. So I think it was 2 Fridays ago, if I'm not mistaken. I can't. It all blurs together.
That's right. It's 2 Fridays ago.
It was 2 Fridays ago. So myself and Rabbi Donna Berman, who's executive director of the Charter Oak Cultural Center, just organized a prayer vigil. We didn't want it to be a media event. We didn't want politicians. We just wanted to bring people of faith to stand out in front of the Federal Building and pray. And so clergy who showed up were invited to pray. And that's literally all we did. And there were about 100 people showed up. And what was heartening to me is that we really didn't put the word out very far, but about 100 people came. And I look at that as kind of a rehearsal, as practicing, as getting ready for that eventual ICE surge, or as figuring out ways to just be present and public and vocal about our disappointment with what's happening, about our disgust with what's happening, but using this spiritual resource of prayer to ground ourselves and again to make ourselves ready. I love what they're doing in Stanford. They're doing it every Monday at noon. I would love to see us do it on a regular vigil in Hartford. And it would be great if we could inspire some folks to start doing it regularly in New Haven and New London and Willimantic and Waterbury and Danbury, Bridgeport. I think it would be impressive, but also again, it's we'd be flexing that spiritual muscle that is so important, what we saw so visibly in Minneapolis as just a central part of the resistance. I think this is this kind of vigiling is us getting ready. So there's another one happening on Wednesday. It's actually a different group of people organized it, but I think the turnout's going to be pretty large. And it's Ash Wednesday. So some of the Christian clergy who are involved are using this as it's going to be this public witness, but also an opportunity to dispense ashes for people who want them. And then there's also woven into this is the mindfulness that Ramadan is commencing, the Muslim holy month, and that Purim and Passover are coming in the Jewish liturgical year. What the centerpiece of this vigil is a letter that a group of clergy, I was not part of this, but a group of clergy wrote to ICE agents and employees. I can read it if you want to hear it. It's about a page and a half. Should I share it? This is going to be published in the Hartford Courant. I'm not sure when. I think it's going to be published after the vigil. It says, to all of the agents and employees of ICE, we represent a broad coalition of religious leaders of various faith traditions. This is a letter written in love. It is a letter written out of concern for you. It is a letter written out of concern for all of us. We have seen your helmets and your masks. We have seen your mirrored sunglasses and the body armor you use to conceal any identifiable human feature of your bodies. So too, we have seen your weapons, sometimes pointed at us and at those we care about. We have observed the terror you have brought to the communities we serve, and indeed the terror you have sown in communities all across the country. We have observed the tactics you have used to disappear mothers and fathers into a system of labyrinthine prisons and camps. We have seen what you have done to children. We have observed the cruelty you have visited upon ordinary U.S. citizens who dare to speak out or to criticize you. Most chilling of all, we have observed the execution of individuals who have defied you. And we wonder, who are you who hide behind those masks? What life experiences have brought you to a place where you are willing to inflict this kind of trauma and pain on other people, to visit terror upon your neighbors? And we wonder about the sort of pain you must carry as a result of what you are now being asked to do. As religious leaders, we have worked with victims of trauma and also with those who have inflicted it, the abused and the abuser alike. We have learned that the one who inflicts pain is usually in pain. So too, we have learned that no one walks away unscathed after inflicting harm upon another. We know that you were made for more than this. Your lives are worth far more than the degradation to which you now submit. We are now entering a season of repentance and renewal among several religious traditions. This week, Muslims begin fasting for Ramadan. Christians are marking Ash Wednesday and the beginning of Lent, walking a sacred path to Easter. And for Jews, today is the beginning of the month of Adar, during which Purim takes place, celebrating the overturning of evil decrees. And soon Passover will be here, festival of freedom. Each of these religious traditions urges its adherents to reflect on where they are headed, to return to God, to each other, to their best selves. And they all affirm the need and the opportunity for all human beings to correct course and amend our ways, knowing that we all can fall short of the dignity and humanity that we have been granted. Now is the time for turning. Now is the time for returning. It is not too late. We ask you to lay down your arms. We invite you to open your arms to the love you were meant to have, to the love you were meant to be, with a commitment to our shared humanity. And then so far there are, I believe there's something like 130 or 140 signatures so far from like 50 or 60 towns around Connecticut. They're all faith leaders. But that list, that I know the invites haven't gone out far enough yet. There's a lot of people who should have signed who are not on that list yet. So.
Thank you, Reverend Josh, for reading it. For me, the letter in part is entitled "An Interfaith Witness," and what has been very intriguing for me as we lift it up and as we continue to support the group that's been doing the work that we've just mentioned down in Stanford. I think it is important in a faithful way to bear witness, right? And for me, bearing witness has embedded in it, in the idea of bearing witness, has a deeply embodied and action-oriented face to it. It is for me. How do we witness, or to witness is a kind of thing we experience, right? It's a thing that both has a body to it, so it's embodied, but also has a spirit to it. It's if I can make up a word, I don't know if this is a word, it's ensouled, right? It has something to do with what is seen and experienced, visually, physically, but it is also something that is known and felt in the heart. It has some conscience to it. It has there's something that's character making and character shaping. To bear witness for me is both, an activity of remembering and remembering, right? But also there's something that's anticipating, word and deed, right? It's giving and receiving. So it's all of that kind of together, and what are we bearing witness to? To the suffering that has a real. There's something biting. There's something powerfully present in allowing for the witness to have shape. And so who best to do that than those of us of faith, right? And so in some ways, I feel like it's our duty,
This is the lane you were talking about.
Yeah, this is right where we ought to be. And to have this lane occupied, not led by those of us of faith, feels strange to me. So what's your reaction or reflection about that?
Well, I think for me, I would just add to your understanding of bearing witness the notion that there are things in this world, certainly in our nation's history, this history of white supremacy and the way it continues to operate, that in so many ways, I'm speaking as a white person, I think all of us, but particularly white people, are just trained and socialized to not see it, to not encounter it, to not feel it. And so this bearing witness it's actually a spiritual practice of not looking away, of seeing the thing, of understanding the thing and realizing this is wrong, this is bad, this is evil, this is cruel, this is heartless, and not looking away, letting it be real, and then letting that turn our hearts, and also the people that we serve, the people that we're in touch with, letting it turn their hearts, so that we contribute to this resistance, this movement, and make change and stop this from happening. I think there's a lot of power in it. I also think it takes different forms, and I know there are people, we watched in Minneapolis a lot of our sibling clergy taking a rest at the airport, and so there are people who are starting to ask that question. I know at the Greater Heart Interfaith Action Alliance, they're beginning to wonder about what does civil disobedience look like in this era, and that this is, to me, another form of bearing witness, and it's one that obviously ramps up the stakes. The risk becomes much greater. So those are my initial thoughts.
Sure, and of course, we've led here in Connecticut in this idea of what does it mean to put our bodies on the line. What does it mean to stand in the space of, right? What does bearing in our bodies the marks of our Lord Jesus in a Christian context? But I would say that in other faith traditions, this notion, this idea of what is understood in a spirit way, that our faith is only in part when it doesn't also add to it the works that are real, not just ideals that are with fragments, but also that has something to do with the fragility and the fallenness of who we are, right? And that says this is who So for example, there's a Negro spiritual that says, before I'll be a slave again, I'll be buried in my grave and go home. Old freedom is the name of that spiritual. And I feel like in that's not just I feel. It's I have asked, are we really ready to take up our cross? If we're talking about the season of Lent for the Christian, it's understood in part for us to reflect and to recommit ourselves to the journey of the cross, which means, in fact, there's death there. Ooh, I'm starting to preach. Okay. So I feel like in some ways, you tell me if I'm wrong, brother, that there are acts that are occurring. There's some busy work that's out here. Where are we though? Where's the real of it? And I think some of our siblings are beginning to struggle with what this actually means, right? That there is a lived risk, and there's a this is fun for the season kind of risk. And I'm really not trying to throw shade. I honor every single person who, in whatever way that they can, begin to step into what's scary, to step into what can't be pre-planned. And you and I have, as much as anybody in the last 10, 12 years have taken some of those risks in ways that I think have honored who we are and the people we are called to serve, right? And yet, I also I asked the question: where is the faithfulness of bearing witness? How does that help to change and do real change work at the end of the day? And where does that live out?
I think it's a great question. And I don't have the answer. But I'm aware that at all levels of the kinds of actions we're talking about, a certain amount of it is just performative. And I want to go and I'll take pictures and I want to put it on Facebook, and because I want people to know, and there's something genuine and real about that. But then I'm also thinking, it's also performative. Like because I want people to see this thing. I want some cred, right? And I don't know how to escape that. But I also know, I think to me, the thing that makes it real is when we do, if it's a vigil, or if it's the legislative advocacy, or if it's the accompaniment or the mutual aid, are you building genuine relationships with the people that you're encountering? Number one. And are you organizing? Are you leaving some structure or moving towards some structure that will hold, that will sustain, that will endure when the going gets tough, when the surge comes, or when the breadwinner is detained, or when the police shoot someone, or do you have that structure in place? And I think if at least for me, if I'm walking through the world, moving through the world, doing the things that I do, and coming out of the encounters with one-on-ones with people, and building that structure, then it does feel real, and it's measurable. That's actually measurable. And when the going gets tough, when all hell breaks loose, there's no relationship, no structure that is 100% reliable. You just don't know what's going to happen. Like we don't know the difference. We know what it means to get arrested by the Hartford police. We're not sure what it means to get arrested or detained by ICE, right? We don't know. I mean, we need to do some research there too.
And listen, I told people many a time, there's something very different when we're talking about local charges or the potential for local charges and the potential for federal charges, right? I've had the occasion to get arrested in Washington, D.C. And who handles those are the Metro Police, the Metro D.C. Police, along with the Capitol Police. And in most instances, you're charged by the city of Washington, D.C. So those are local charges.
My DC charge was a local charge.
Local charge, right? So there's a way that's handled. But there are also federal charges. So when those who were arrested, tried, and convicted on January 6th, for example, then were able to receive a pardon from this current president because they were federal charges, right? So
all I know is I used to visit people at the Danbury Women's Prison who had been arrested at the School of the Americas, and for what I can tell, what we did in Hartford was what's much more disruptive than what they did at the School of the Americas. But they were in prison for 6 months or a year, and we were doing community service. So
that's exactly. There is a difference, and I'll tell you, we had a colleague who were colleagues that were involved in those School of America actions back in the 90s, in particular, who did have time. They did time. They did federal time there. So it is, and of course, it's my concern when people start to do things and take those kinds of risks and respond in ways that we actually do that consciously, and we do that informed, and we do that being prepared for what it takes to make that decision. And can I also say, not do that being reactionary in a kind of emotional way. If we have learned anything from the civil rights movement and the tradition of resistance and doing resistance and activism on the street level, if we've learned anything, we've got to do that, understanding what we're doing, and at least try to anticipate, to the degree that we can, how to move and how to do that in concert together, right? And it's the promise that I made to our leadership. You know this more than anybody, better than anybody, and to anybody that works with us doing that kind of resistance work. That we're going to be trained, and we're going to be disciplined. That comes with it. The part of bearing witness that actually is not there to direct, is there to respond, is there to on purpose, is there to do a thing. Because the point ain't the arrest. The point is the issue that we're talking about, that then gives us the opportunity to take the spotlight for the moment, to share, to do the things that need to happen. So there's something I think both thoughtful and faithful, if you will, if we were to engage in that way. And I guess that's the point of this conversation for us, is that we have a obligation and a responsibility as faith leaders to lead in this way. Yeah. And we have
specific ways we can do that are unique to our calling.
That's exactly right. There are folk who have done time. We have colleagues that have taken stance, at the military facilities that we've have here in Connecticut. We have a sister friend who did some very risky behavior in and around the nuclear submarine
Down in New London, yeah.
and did some time for it. And so I am grateful for the example of bearing witness. And not only does my hat go out to those who have served time and those who have taken those kinds of risks, but I honor them and I honor their commitment to justice work in these times. And the question is, what will you do, right? And clearly we have all of us of faith, certainly who are serving within the context of community and congregations and such, our faith communities. We have the bully pulpit to wax eloquently, ever so eloquently, about what it is we believe we are called to, as thus saith God, thus saith our moral and conscious spiritual discipline and tradition. But also, what are we, thus saith God, and our moral and ethical responsibility as it relates to putting our bodies out there and on the real and the everyday, and our money and our time. All of those are at least ways in which we can respond faithfully in this moment. This is an unprecedented time for us. Right? This is an opportunity for us to be bold and live out bearing witness in the works that we've done. Dr. King, in his one of his more famous sermons, Drum Major for Justice, he quotes the song, "If I can help somebody as I travel along, if I can cheer somebody with the word and song, if I could, show somebody who's traveling wrong, the right way, then my living will not be in vain." And I'm grateful, quite frankly, for you, because as we began this work, I'm in the midst. The threat is I'm going to write a book about Moral Monday, and what I won't ever forget that I'll tell and retell. We were in the room down at Center Church there I think you told me about the meeting. And then our sister, who was the minister at Center Church at that time, invited us, and we were in a conversation in that room in the church house.
Was it Damaris at that point?
It was Reverend Whitaker,
and you were just back. You and Pamela were just back from Ferguson.
That's right. That's right.
We had called a meeting because we wanted to plan a meeting with Hartford Police, and you guys said no. We've done that, and look where it's gotten us. It's time to do it differently. Yeah, that was sort of the beginning of Moral Monday CT.
It was the very beginning of it, and that led to ultimately that Monday, that first Monday in June, where we shut Hartford down. Yeah. Right. And really began to make a difference in within the context of this current, that was, and Reverend Josh, that was 10 years ago.
That's right.
That was over 10 years ago. So for us, that's I guess for me, this opportunity is the right time to ask the question in faithful ways. How will we respond? What are the faithful ways to act and respond now, and not just do that willy-nilly, not just do that in a kind of reactionary mode, but let's be proactive. And what I'm stressing in this moment, while there are opportunities and ways in which we must respond, there are also ways, if we're going to be faithful, and it's necessary for me right now to be faithful, then we also got to be proactive. We got to do some strategy work. Those of us who have the mind, the will, the heart, the experience, are to be in closed session, if you will.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're
Right,
absolutely right.
and having some fairly high level conversations, and high level. And what I mean by that is some real conversations. What are we willing to do, and as true organizers, how many you gonna bring along with you, right? So that we are power. If we're gonna be 5, 10, let's be a powerful 50, 15, right? And I have one picture that in many ways reflects for me the power of our witness. You know, when the Hartford 17 became the Hartford 17. At one point there's a picture from up above. Somebody was up above us, and there's a line of us that had stood in the blocking that entry onto the bridge and the freeway there.
Right.
And there were probably about 90 to 100 of us there. And that's a power, holding hands there, chanting and holding forth as a powerful witness, that moment. And it's embedded in my memory, in my mind's eye, that at least there was one time, and we've had a number of times here, but there was one time, and we had friends from all over the state.
Yeah.
You know, you and I were on, and all of a sudden I look around and there were people from Bridgeport.
There were hundreds of people there.
Yeah, there were people from all over who were with us, and we were across the you know, we were those of us of faith. There was labor there. There were all, you know, all of us from several different spaces and several different constituencies. I'm very proud of that moment, and I know we can do this. And so, any last word? We jumped past an hour, and I'm appreciative for this time. What else would you have to say? And of course, you're gonna be back because we got more to say and there's more to talk about, quite frankly.
Well, I don't want to get in a deep conversation about this. We don't have time now, but you know, I'm just mindful that Congress passed HR 1 and the president signed it last summer, and these ICE surges, this ICE activity, this newly funded $75 billion law enforcement operation, ICE, that money is taken from poor people. And I just want to keep saying that, because it's not just the billionaires who are getting the tax cuts, but it's funding this violence that we see. Mm-hmm. It's funding this lawlessness. That money is taken from poor people in the United States. And I'll just end it there. I mean, that's a whole nother issue, but I just think it's so important to say that.
You tempted me to say more. Let's save it for the next time we're on together. Thank you, Reverend Josh.
You're welcome. Thank you
to share in this moment. Listen, folks, there's so much to continue to do, and here's my challenge, and here's my offer. Let's be in more conversations about what are these, I'm calling these moral times, right? What are we facing? And I'm committed. Reverend Josh is committed, and there are certainly those of us who are with Moral Monday and others. We are willing to sit in this and lead conversation and get you stirred up. Maybe get you mad about a thing or three. Get you to disagree, right? Get you to have your own opinions about things, or whatever that is. Whatever we can both conjure up and help you think through, and help us think through. We are better together. And listen, there's no going back to the same, because it's done. What has been is been, and now we got to afford some new ways of being in the world, and we got to do it together. All right. And God bless you. I appreciate you, Reverend Josh. Thank you again. And we'll be at this again next week and in the coming days ahead. And maybe there will be some specials coming through, not just on our regular Monday lives. We may be doing some other things and continue to talk in the manner that we have begun. So looking forward to it. God bless everybody. Peace.
Thank you, Bishop.
See you.
See you next time.
All righty.